All right, we will go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar on unlocking hiring success in a competitive talent market. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but I promise the content is great. Thank you so much for joining, and I will go ahead and jump into it. So before we get started, first want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us. We know that your time is incredibly valuable, so we want to make sure, and we take a lot of pride in providing content that is actionable and hopefully it gives you new ideas to implement in your recruiting and hiring strategies. So thank you again for taking the time to join us. Second of all, we love questions, so please feel free to use the Q&A function in Zoom and ask us all the tough questions that you might have for us today. And lastly, this recording will be distributed after the webinar, so don't feel pressured to write down everything. We promise we'll get you the recording shortly after the webinar. All right. And with that, I will go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Wendy Lu. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Sense. I've been here for a little over or about 2 years. Time really flies in the pandemic, but super excited to just talk through some of the pieces of our key technology and how companies and how the industry is actually leveraging technology to hire in this competitive landscape. And I am incredibly excited to be joined by Jenny. And Jenny, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Gamel. I'm the corporate recruiter here at Sense. I have been a recruiter for 7 years now. I have done both high and low volume recruiting, so I feel like I have pretty good understanding of it all. And really excited to be on this webinar. This is definitely something I'm super passionate about. So I really appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Well, we are incredibly excited to have you, Jenny. So thank you so much for being on the webinar. All right. And for those who are not familiar with Sense, we power talent engagement at over 700 companies to over 100 million candidates and employees. Sense is used every day by over 40,000 recruiters to help drive more than 3 million hires a year. So incredibly excited and proud of the stats and the impact that we've been able to have on the industry. Sense directly integrates with all major ATSs, including Workday, SuccessFactors, iCIMS, so on and so forth. And we also have an open API to consume data from several other systems. And with that, I'll just jump right in. The real meat of today's conversation, which is talking about this competitive talent market. So before we dive in, I want to talk to some of the leading indicators and some of the statistics and industry research that we're seeing in the market. So even with the economic uncertainty and news of layoffs, companies that are continuing to hire say that the talent market is still highly competitive. In a research by PwC, they surveyed business executives earlier this year, and 77% of respondents said that hiring and retaining talent is the most critical factor to achieving business targets. On top of that, HR Drive conducted a survey in July saying that 37% of talent leaders say that hiring still remains their top challenge, and indicated that it's because candidates are still super selective of what roles they pursue. And this actually really supports the research that we've actually done in partnership with the Talent Board this last summer, which found that engaging and communicating with passive talent is a top challenge that recruiters face. But let's actually hear it from a recruiter themselves. So Jenny, how have you seen the talent market change over the last 6 months?
Well, I think we can all agree that the past 6 months have been absolutely wild. We've all been on LinkedIn, seen in the news layoffs, sometimes multiple companies a day. And you would think that would change the market quite a bit. There's definitely more candidates in the market, but candidates still are selective. And I would go as far to say they're even more selective with the layoffs. They want to make sure that they're joining, a strong business. They want to know, what the company is doing. They ask the questions up front before they even interview. So I guess to answer the question, over the past 6 months, I would say that it's almost even more challenging, and candidates are even more selective than they were previously.
Definitely. I think that throughout the past, even beyond 6 months, but in the past 2 years, you've seen a huge shift in just how people are prioritizing how they spend their time and how they're thinking about their work and how work actually, what kind of role their work plays in the bigger picture of their lives. So definitely still a competitive market. And what we wanted to do here is also talk about some of the reasons why hiring is still so competitive. Our research actually shows that when job seekers sit down to apply for jobs, they're applying to up to 12 openings at once, and that's in one session. And we all know that, you don't typically just apply once or in one session. You're hiring throughout the month, throughout the week. So they can actually be applying to hundreds of jobs in a given session or in a given kind of period. On top of that, candidates are really valuing other factors in their jobs beyond compensation, like their work-life balance, flexible work schedules, culture, training and growth opportunities. They want to know that the company that they're interviewing for is actually really emphasizing and investing in things that are important to them before they think about applying and interviewing and going through all that time investing in the company as well. And with multiple options, candidates won't go through a lengthy application process. I cannot stress this enough. If you're asking someone to go through a 40-page application, they will not do it. They'll quickly abandon the application and they'll move on to the next opportunity. And I think this is also indicative of how they view companies as well. They want to make sure that their company is being thoughtful and collecting information that's actually critical, not things that no one wants to write a 3-page essay anymore. No one wants to do that. And then when they do apply, candidates are prioritizing hiring companies that are quickest to respond and schedule an interview. And after a candidate interviews, they also want a quick hiring process with frequent updates. So if you fall out of touch, they'll shift their focus to another job. And even if that even extends after they've accepted the role, you need to keep them engaged before their start date, or you might see a drop off between when they've signed their agreement and when they actually start. So Jenny, another question for you. In your experience, what is the most important thing to candidates during the hiring process?
So compensation has always been important, but it's definitely not the most important anymore. I think going back to 2020 and how tough a year that was for everyone in general, but also, businesses and employees, people want to be happy. We survived that year, and people really value, work and how it fits into their life versus the other way around. So I would say work-life balance and the culture, just again, going back to being happy. A quick and short interview process, I think too, that shows that the company is up with the times and not old school. So it kind of gives like a peek into how the company might operate internally once they join. Transparency, people want answers to questions up front. They want to know what's going on. They want to know, why this position is even open. They just have a lot of questions now. And then communication throughout, super important to stay in touch with their candidates. I saw a saying, no update is still an update. So even if you have nothing to provide, just letting them know that you're still waiting on feedback goes a long way. So
yeah, definitely. And what I'd like to do today is, we covered why things are still really challenging from a competitive landscape perspective or a talent landscape perspective. We talked about things that are really critical from a candidate experience perspective. So what we'd like to do is actually go through our 5 tips and tricks on really how to succeed in today's talent market. And these are things that are paired with how the industry is moving forward and how candidate expectations are shifting. So we'll go into each one of these in more detail in the future slides, but first, really critical to answer questions as fast as possible from job seekers. Again, going back to the fact that they're applying to 10 to 12 jobs in a given session, you really want to make sure that you're being quick to answer their questions or they'll just move on. The second one is making job openings visible, making sure that you're really leveraging all the unique different places to amplify different requisitions that you have available. Third is offering a simplified application experience and instantly screening candidates and scheduling them for interviews, making that whole screen schedule as easy as possible. Fourth is providing frequent personalized communication to candidates throughout the hiring process. Like Jenny mentioned, just being able to quickly and being able to consistently message them. And then lastly, transitioning quickly from hiring to onboarding. And this one, I can't stress how critical it is, because if you think about it, you've spent so much time and resources and energy and just cost into making sure that you've had this final candidate go through. it's devastating if they don't actually start. And we've actually seen that this number is much higher than what companies actually expect it to be. But again, in this era where there's so much more opportunity for candidates, it is critical to keep them engaged. Like if they're applying to you, they're probably applying to 6 other different companies. So making sure that you're, communicating with them, that they are getting excited, that they're engaging with you, and also just being able to know, like, if there are any trouble issues before they are starting. You won't ever know that unless you're in constant communication with them. So I think the big question here is, all of this sounds great. How do you do this at scale? And how do you do this in a way that is not more of a burden, but less of a burden for your recruiters? So really balancing that mix of a high touch recruiting and candidate experience, while also minimizing as much inefficiencies and just making sure that my earring keeps on getting stuck in my sweater, sorry. And just being able to quickly transition them. So we'll talk through that a little bit in these next couple of slides. So first one here is instantly answering questions from job seekers. So job seekers, like we mentioned, are more selective than ever before, and they have a variety of questions that they want to get answered before they even apply for their job. So not only things like what the job pays, but things like, what are the hours? Can I work from home? What is the company culture like? What is it, a hybrid schedule? Things like this. These are questions that have been coming more and more. And if they're repeated, they're not going to, your recruiters have an opportunity to really scale that and automate those questions. So candidates aren't going to wait days or even hours for a reply. They'll shift their focus to the next job opportunity that they find during their search. But on top of that, your recruiting team probably doesn't have the capacity to respond to every single question from every potential candidate, let alone do that in a timely manner, right? Like you want your recruiters to focus their time on, those mid-funnel or down-funnel candidates. So it might not be worth their time to engage and answer every single question from top of funnel. So let's talk about how you can actually do that using technology. Smart FAQs. So using smart FAQs, you can actually fill in, you can leverage chatbots across web, across your career site, across your, even your job boards. You can also have smart FAQs, chatbots through SMS as well. And what you can do is you can actually fill in answers in a library of predefined questions. So something like, the Sense AI chatbot, we actually relay those questions onto job seekers on your website or through any of those other channels, so that you can actually respond to your candidates' questions instantly. And this can flow easily from answering all the questions that they might need in terms of, do you offer benefits, or why do you need my information, especially in this time of privacy and security. So you can answer all those questions for your candidates 24/7 without any lift from your recruiters. So this is a really quick and easy way for you to provide that high touch experience for your candidates without any lift from your recruiters as well. The second thing that we talked about here is making your job openings visible. So in a competitive hiring market, you really need to make sure that your job openings are getting in front of as many candidates as possible, and also provide a seamless candidate experience, especially since attracting job seekers via job boards is becoming a little less effective. You really need to think a little bit out of the box about how you're attracting new talent. On top of that, cost per hire has been steadily increasing year over year, which I'm sure every business person is feeling. And a lot of that is actually attributed to job board spend. So using job boards is kind of another barrier to entry for attracting candidates, because it really feels like those with the biggest bucks wins. And what we actually argue is that you can be a lot more strategic about how you're leveraging different types of real estate or different types of property, if you will, to really engage and be able to attract new talent. So one of the examples of that is leveraging text to apply and QR codes. We made a joke that basically with text to apply and QR code, anything and everything is free real estate. And you actually see these QR codes becoming a lot more common across just everyday life. You can see QR codes being used to pull up menus or to pay for items or pay for goods or to get more information. So you see this becoming a lot more in practice. And what this actually allows you to do is turn every single one of your storefronts, your cars, your lawns. We actually had a customer who posted their QR code to apply on a bunch of yard signs, and they just posted it in front of their company in their company property. And they were able to engage a ton more applicants who were just curious to see what the QR code was and what kind of jobs they were offering. But that's another quick way that costs very little money compared to job boards, and you're able to really increase engagement that way. I think I was telling Jenny this as well, but Sephora takes too much of my money. But on every single one of their storefronts, they're actually leveraging a QR code in order for them to hire new retail folks. And I think it's a really unique way, because when you think about people who are using your brand or using your company, those are the people who are actually most passionate about wanting to work for you as well. They have that connection, and they have that knowledge of like what your brand is and what they do, and they're always already a valued customer. So it's a really easy way for you to engage with people who are actively coming to your businesses.
Plus, they want the employee discount.
Yes. Number 3 here, we talk about offering a simplified application experience and quickly going through the screening and scheduling process. So as we mentioned, candidates really won't tolerate a lengthy application process. And I challenge each and every one of you on the call today to really look at your application process and go through it yourselves. We talk about that with our customers all the time, of just, going through the candidate experience yourself and seeing what that application feels like. How much information are you collecting? How many clicks is it taking you to submit your application? And really think about making it as seamless as possible. There was actually a report from Indeed that said 40% of applications are abandoned before completion because of a poor user experience. And so if you're able to just clean that up and shorten it down, you can exponentially increase your top of funnel, because you're getting more people to complete their applications, getting more people into their top of funnel. But we all know that also reviewing applications and sending back and forth emails to collect interview availability, it's often the biggest bottleneck in the hiring process. I think we actually found that it takes an average of 7 to 10 emails for you to confirm and lock down an interview. And that number goes up if you're rescheduling or finding a new time, or something happened where you have to get your lawn like slow powder, whatever it is. And that takes up a lot of time for your recruiters. It takes up a lot of time for your candidates, and it can often extend your application period, or the period in which they're in that interview stage, by several days or even weeks. So we actually showed that various time studies show that time to hire can actually exceed 40 days, depending on the role and industry. So naturally, many candidates lose interest over time. I can't remember what I did 40 days ago these days. So if you're, reaching out to a company, you want to make sure that you're at least engaging with them and seeing, if they are qualified for the positions that they're applying to. And you can actually really leverage automation to screen candidates and schedule those who are qualified, which instantly reduces your time to hire. So an example of doing that is through things like conversational AI chatbots. So chatbots these days are a lot more sophisticated than chatbots of the past. They can, for example, our Sense AI chatbot is married with a ton of machine learning that is specific to recruiting, so it actually understands and can understand what type of information it's collecting. You can collect application information as well as some critical factors such as, can you work 40 hours a week? Are you authorized to work in the United States? Things that recruiters are asking no matter what. And you can instantly just collect all that information that is basically your go, no go. If they answer these questions, then yes, we'll continue a conversation with them. If they, aren't qualified for whatever reason, then will bring them into more of a different nurture flow, saying that, hey, like you're not qualified for this job, but you could also just nurture them for future positions in the future. You can intelligently screen candidates against your role requirements. Your screening flow can be completely customized to what kind of information you need to collect. And if they pass your screening criteria, you can instantly schedule the qualified candidates to recruiters' calendars on your team. So you can do round robin, you can do first available, and it really just seamlessly makes that application experience and go from application to interview scheduled in minutes. Moving on to the fourth one here. We talked about providing frequent and personalized communication throughout the hiring process. Continuously communicating with candidates throughout the hiring process keeps them engaged and keeps them interested, and it reduces the candidate drop-off. Again, it's a challenging time, and it's a challenge for recruiters to respond for every single candidate at every single stage of the candidate or the hiring process. But at the same time, if the candidate feels that you're being unresponsive, or they feeling they have fallen out of touch, they might simply just move on to the next opportunity. So one of the ways that you can actually do that is through workflow automation. So you can actually bring in candidates no matter where they are in the candidate funnel, and you can actually enroll them into different workflows. Like this is a workflow saying that, hey, you applied for this new IT specialist job. We'll screen you to make sure that this is a good fit. We'll do an email follow-up if you haven't connected with them. And then you can actually have any one of these be dynamic, so that if they do follow up, then great, interview scheduled. If they don't follow up, maybe you have more emails in your sequence. But we actually found that it takes an average from like 7 to 12 emails that actually kind of helps candidates get nurtured throughout this funnel. So especially when it comes to nurturing passive candidates, you want to be able to do that at scale, but still provide them an opportunity to update their information or provide you with more details on a role that they're actually looking for. And last but not least, and I promise I will take a break and let Jenny talk after this too, is talking about transitioning quickly from hiring to onboarding. And we talked a little bit about this at the very beginning about how critical it is, especially in this time frame, because you've invested so much in your candidates. So the time between a candidate accepting an offer and starting is an often overlooked ghosting point in the hiring process. Candidates might continue to interview with other companies to find an offer or a situation that is better fit for them, but they can also end up second guessing their decision to join their company as the interview process excitement wears off. So keeping in touch with candidates leading up to their start date and starting the onboarding process really reaffirms their commitment to your company. We've actually had companies introduce like a 5 to 7 email sequence that says, hey, thanks so much. Like, we're super excited to work with you. You can have an email that comes from the hiring manager saying that they are incredibly excited for them to join their team, or a little bit of background on people that they'll be working with. And all of that really helps the candidate feel invested in your company and reaffirms their decision of, hey, like, I decided to join a company that really cares about my experience and really is setting myself up for success. It also prepares them to hit the ground running and get right to work when they get started for day one. So things like your mission statement or your vision statement, or things that are your OKRs or your goals for the year. These are great things that you can actually introduce within that period between when they accept their offer and when they get started, to help you really engage with them. And one of the best ways to actually engage with your candidates is through automated messaging or mass messaging. Through one-on-one texting, you can actually create automated updates throughout the hiring process that are sent via text, which helps keeps candidates updated about their status. Text messages can help them to complete new hire paperwork. And it also just helps it feel a little bit more personalized. I don't know about you, but I get thousands of emails. And I just kind of control all and just delete them sometimes because it's just too overwhelming. But if I know that, my recruiter is messaging me or my hiring manager is texting me, it creates a lot more of an easy experience for myself and helps me feel like I can actually have a more engaging conversation with them. And you can always revert to email for some of the more like document heavy paperwork. And you can also pair the two. You can have an email sent out and you can send them a text saying, hey, I just sent you an email for you to check out. And that can actually help boost your response rates and your engagement rates for your candidates. All right, so now that I a long wind of technology and how it helps you unlock hiring success, what I'd love to do at this time and just go into a Q&A session with Jenny and get actually her personal experience and her tips and tricks and strategies that she's leveraging as a recruiter, and hopefully give you all insight into how recruiters and how hiring has actually been at the front line. So again, I'm going to encourage everyone to fill out any questions that they might have on the Q&A session or Q&A function in chat, and we'll go ahead and answer those in order as well. So Jenny, with that, because I need a break from talking, how do you use AI and automation when recruiting and hiring?
Well, just to touch on the text messaging piece, it's 2022. Everyone has their phones on them. They're always texting. So it really resonates with candidates too when you reach out to them. It's super personal. So, understood, favorite, but what has saved me so much time is our scheduling tool, shameless sense plug. But I'm a low volume recruiter. So, if I see, I'm of course recruiting for multiple roles as well. But if someone applies or if I'm sourcing, I can send a link for that specific role. I can make all these different templates. So this is from a more manual standpoint, but I can make all these different templates for each role. So when they show up on my calendar, it's for that specific role that it will say, you're speaking to this person for this role versus just this 30-minute meeting that showed up. I can also tailor, I could block a day off, or I could tailor it to a 15-minute touch base call, or it could be 30 minutes. If I need even more time, I can make it longer and just quick update, copy the link and send it. And I've told a couple people this, and I almost put in our Slack on Sense, but I was like, you know what, let me just leave this. But, I was crushing it all morning, sourcing, sending messages. And then I stepped away for lunch. And when I came back, I had just from the 20 minutes I was away from my desk, 2 scheduled phone interviews with me while I was away. So I made a joke, I was working while I wasn't working. So saved so much time. I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's kind of like that recruiter, that 24/7 recruiter aspect that really helps your recruiters, focus their time on the things that really require your brain and your heart and your humanity, and let kind of technology take all the boring and the administrative stuff. So definitely love that. One question I have here for you, Jenny, is, we talk a lot about introducing new technology and helping, with this whole idea of digital transformation. But one of the things that we've seen a lot of other other people talk about when it comes to adopting new technology is that they often have a struggle getting their recruiters to actually adopt. And we are, at Sense, we're really, really passionate about making sure that all the technology that you have is maximized, your investment in them is maximized. So a question that I have for you is, how do you make sure that recruiters really adopt this new types of technology? How can you really encourage and enforce that type of adoption?
You really need to spend the time. It's just like with anyone, your grandma gets a new cell phone that she doesn't know how to use it. But once she realizes she's getting the pictures from, her grandkids, she wants to use it. So you really need to spend the time in showing them how it works and getting them excited to use the tool. Also I guess I can mention too, if you're a good recruiter, you should want to use technology. the time saver, I mean, the amount of time that it saves, there's so much sourcing and following up with candidates and, following up with hiring managers and different roles, anything to save you time is going to make you so much better at your job. So, but really going back to like adopting new tools and technology, you really have to spend the time trainings and just making sure they're getting the most use out of it. And I think once you spend that time and they start using it more and more, they'll realize how much time, how much time is saved, and they'll keep using it. Oh, you're muted, Wendy.
You would think after 2 years, happens at least once every call. One thing that I would also emphasize is that bring your recruiters into the conversation when you're evaluating technology. I think that when we think about how recruiters are spending their time, like take the time to actually understand their process and understand like what are some of the big challenges or what are some of the big time inefficiencies that they're struggling with, and really marry that to have the biggest impact on their processes. So one example that I heard from one of our customers is they're a company that does high volume hiring. They are in the manufacturing and factory space, and their recruiters were managing anywhere from 100 to 150 candidates at any given point. And on any given week, they had about 20 to 40 people starting on that on that following Monday. And they are very old. They kind of they're very traditional in how their recruiters were managing their communications with their candidates or with the talent. And so each one of their recruiters were spending their Sunday nights sending this templatized text to their new hires saying, hey, reminder, your first day is tomorrow, check in with this person. If you have any questions, let me know. And they created text templates or like just notes that they would copy and paste into every single text. And they would do that on every Sunday to make sure that their talent was actually showing up for the job on Mondays. And they were adamant about doing this because they were like, this is how, we make sure that they show up, and like, we want to make sure that they're high touch. But when we introduced this whole idea of like automated messaging that you can actually schedule, and our integration with their ATS will pull in all the relevant information, like their name, the job, their location, they were actually getting hours back on their Sunday. Awesome. to just, just by doing that one thing. And it was just hands off for them. And that quickly turned them from like hating the idea of automation to really loving it, to seeing what other use cases they can apply it to. But I think that's one really key use case of just like bringing in the conversation to your recruiters of understanding how they're leveraging their time and being able to cut out a lot of things that are monotonous and routine and things that we could easily automate.
Yeah, and just to talk more about that too, I worked in staffing for a short time, and you truly get from the clients, I worked in the logistics industry, and you really get a request for like 12 warehouse workers tomorrow morning, and it's 2 p.m. Yeah, you have to have automation, or that's what actually got me most excited about joining Sense when I was like in the interview process. And why, one, it's, I'm a recruiter, and joining a company that helps recruiters was huge, but right away, I was like, oh my gosh, going back to that time, everybody would hop on the phones, voicemails, people would be calling back. People were coming in to like onboard and do their background checks and everything. And there was only 2 recruiters and an admin person. So everybody had to hop on the phones. Also, like I realized too, like when you're at these warehouses, the people that are working on the floor, like maybe they're on another assignment that pays less, but yours pays more. They can't have their phones on the floor with them. Like there's forklifts driving around. So, when they get their 15-minute break, the chances of them checking a voicemail and calling you back is slim to none versus responding to a text. You're like, hey, this pays 15 an hour. This, I'm at a 12 an hour job. I'll definitely be there tomorrow. So just want to touch more on that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the reality is that, I'm in the bucket of people that gets too many emails, and I'm sitting in front of my computer almost every day. And I still don't check my emails. So you can imagine people who, aren't in a professional setting where they're not in front of a computer every day, they're probably not checking their emails. So just being able to have And I want to stress that it's not, that texting is completely taking over messaging or emailing. I think from a marketing perspective, it's multi-touch, right? It's the phone call, it's the email, it's the text, and just being able to have that whole communication orchestrated so that they have different opportunities and different ways of contacting you that are on their term. Like we talked about the AI chatbot going on your website earlier and talking about how they can answer questions. We have a ton of customers who are in the healthcare space, and you can imagine a night nurse, like they're not going to be awake when your recruiters are awake. So how can you make sure that they are being, that their questions are being answered, and that they're being able to, kind of get their questions answered and apply and have that whole process be seamless, and pick a date and time that works for them right off the bat. So I think that's just another way of just really making sure that your processes are fitting your recruiting process, or your technology is fitting your recruiting process, and really being able to open up how candidates are engaging today. All right, so moving on to another question that we got here in the chat. So do you find that a candidate's interest in your company increases when you're frequently in touch during the hiring process?
Absolutely. And I think that's another reason where, text is important. And I know all touches are, but you can send that quick update and they'll have it, and they'll just feel engaged with you, and again, personalized. But it just keeps people excited when they're hearing from the recruiter, or, an update from the hiring manager, or, when silence happens, like you said, people start looking elsewhere, or maybe the recruiter at the other company is engaged with them more and getting them more excited, and they will drop off, your process. So yes, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, definitely. Can you share an example of how you use personalized messaging to engage candidates?
So text messaging is huge. So that, but then also for me, like as a low volume recruiter, I know we're talking about high volume. So personalized messages that way, but also, researching the candidate in a low volume setting. I'm speaking to, I guess, what I do now. I look at it as sales. When you reach out to a company, you need to do your research on the company and how you can help them and provide solutions. So I do the same thing with candidates. I want to get as much information as I can. I want to let them know that I took the time to, view their information, and I, took it all in, and, name the companies that they're at. And I feel like my response rate has gone like through the roof, versus just sending like the same message to, many candidates. If I think someone is a great candidate and their experience is outstanding, then I want them to know that. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely. And a question that came here in chat also said, so does this mean that Sense has its own appointment setting and does not have to rely on Calendly? Yes, Sense has its own interview scheduling tool. It integrates with all of your recruiters' calendars. So we integrate with Google and with Microsoft Office and some of the major providers, so that your recruiters can connect their calendars. And as the candidate goes through, and if you give them the scheduling interface, the times that show up are matched with what's available on your recruiters' calendars. And if you have a team of recruiters, you can have it be round robin, so that every recruiter gets a different candidate, or kind of sequentially, or you can do first available so that you're just engaging with the candidate as fastest. But yeah, like Jenny mentioned, Jenny uses our scheduling tool all the time. Yeah, and we also highly encourage to use that everywhere. Like use that on your social posts, use that on your email signatures. And so that just gives you an opportunity to instantly engage with your candidates and have them schedule time with you.
It's super easy to like change the template too. And, if I just want to quickly connect with somebody, I can change it to 15 minutes real fast and just copy the link by clicking a button. I don't even have to like copy paste. I just click this button and paste it to the candidate or whoever. It'll just show up on my calendar, and it's just amazing. Also, I recruit across, several different time zones. So I'm Central Time. So maybe when it's, I have all my kids and, I'm not going to, be checking LinkedIn or what I'm using. The next morning they'll be on my calendar and I'll have an email with their information. It's really awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go next question here. So when texting candidates, do you request permission to do so or just assume it's acceptable? No, we definitely manage all the SMS opt-ins and opt-outs. Our product team, I will say, has probably done the best job of making sure that our businesses and our clients are able to kind of work within the 10 DLC newer regulations when it comes to texting. So we help all of our clients make sure that their numbers are registered, that their campaigns are registered, that they're able to maximize their delivery rate, as this is kind of a new regulation in the texting space, from texting from businesses to individual consumers. So we manage all the opt-ins on our end. We highly, I think it's required for you to at least get SMS opt-in in some other form other than SMS. So it has to be either email or on your website. And we also recommend that you do a secondary SMS opt-in on your actual first communication with your client and candidate as well. But that's the answer for that piece. So, and then another follow-up question here is, does Sense have surveys and assessments so that I can automate what's your favorite movie? Once they are about to onboard or know their Myers-Briggs personality type, I'm an ENFP, so you can track that down. But we do have surveys. Assessments is a little bit of a different piece, but we definitely do surveys, and you're actually able to have that be sent out via email or text. Matthew is also an ENFP. I love it. And yes, all that information gets stored in your candidate record, and it will actually get written back to your ETS as well, if you'd like. So one of the things that we highly recommend is, getting to know their birth date, or just being able to, you can even create automation based off of the information that they provided. So let's say, for example, it's their birthday month. Maybe you're able to kind of pull, their favorite, whatever it is, and you're able to kind of send them an automated message relating to that. So we also do NPS as a part of this as well, in the same kind of survey bucket. So you're able to automatically do pulse surveys across, their 30, 60, 90 day. We highly actually recommend that companies do that so that they're able to track their benchmarks and how they increase and how they decrease over time, and how they can actually improve their NPS scores. We also allow them to do kind of like advanced branching. So you can, if they rate your company highly, then you can redirect them to either give you another referral or leave a review on Glassdoor or on Google reviews or whatever it might be. So yes, we do lots of different types of surveys. All right. And another question here, does Sense provide any analytics so we can review response rates? Yes, we do. We have a whole analytics dashboard. It can be separated by journeys or by response rate, or by touch points, or by the type of channel that you're messaging through. So we provide analytics on your messaging, who of your recruiters is sending the most amount of messages, what messages are being engaged with the most, what kind of, how are your journeys, how are your, workflow automations performing, how can you kind of improve and tweak your chatbot flows to increase submissions. So we take a lot of pride in making sure that our analytics are actionable. And we also provide you in detail data also, like how much time we're saving your recruiters as well. So you get your ROI metrics on one place as well. That was a mouthful. Sorry about that.
That was really good.
It's just like the platform itself, I really geek out over it because there's so many intricate pieces. And I think one of the cool things about our platform too, like not to make this a huge plug, but I think one of the amazing things is that Sense is one of those platforms where the more you invest, the more you can get out of it. There's really an endless amount of journeys or like automations that you can actually introduce. And it's really a matter of your creativity and thinking about, what kind of processes or what kind of impact you want to make on the candidate experience. So very passionate about like, our platform, because I think that it is so tailored, and you can, like I said, it's tailor made for recruiting and for hiring. And so I think that really shows in how we've been able to build out like the recruiter experience and the candidate experience, as well as, your overall HR team's experience as well. Going back to another question here. So this is kind of a follow-up when it comes to speed, but how important is it to move fast when hiring in this competitive market? And what are some of the biggest time inefficiencies that you see as a recruiter?
Time efficiencies?
Yes, inefficiencies.
Oh,
so inefficiencies. What's sucking up the most amount of your time?
Scheduling. Not anymore. I know I keep talking about it, and I'm sorry, but again, like recruiting across different time zones and people getting back at different hours. And, by the time you go to schedule with, that hiring manager, something may be blocked off and you have to go back to them and, change the time. And just like you were mentioning earlier in the webinar, the amount of emails back and forth to get a meeting scheduled can be insane. And it can take even a couple of days. But speed's huge. I've had times in the past where I reached out to a candidate, we talked on the phone, and before I could even like schedule them with a hiring manager, they got an offer from another company. And even though they were super excited about the company I worked for, it's just one of those things that, people want to be engaged and move quickly. And, in this day and age, things move fast and technology is huge, and you just have to keep up with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that's interesting also is that in this competitive market, you also see that companies are competing against other companies, especially in the final stage. So do you have any tips and or tricks up your sleeve of like how to edge out the competition in that final stage?
Well, personally, I happen to be very lucky and I work for a company I love. But I think what I've heard too is, being engaging, but then also excited about the company you work for. So there are people also, same kind of story where another company moved faster, but because I was so excited and I answered all their questions and I was real and genuine about what our company does. And when they answered, asked a question that maybe I didn't have the best answer for, but I was, honest with them, they see that and they'll stick with you. So, and at the same time as moving quickly, if you can't move that quickly, just make sure you're engaged with them and keeping them excited. And, hopefully you work for a company like I do, where you can genuinely be excited when you talk to candidates. I think you could probably talk to some people I brought on board about, how excited I am when I talk to them. And another thing too, when you have more time back in your day, so you don't have to do like the mundane tasks, you get to do what you love, which is talking to people, which that's what I love to do. So anything that gets me closer to being on the phone with the candidate is huge as well.
Yeah.
I
think that's really like a critical piece in how we think about technology. There's a lot of talk about how like recruiters will become obsolete, or like all this automation and AI is like taking over and removing a lot of the humanity out of recruiting, which is such a personal and human industry and department. But I actually challenge that. And I think the way that we really approach technology is leveraging it to almost increase the human connection that you have, because it's removing a lot of those inefficiencies, it's removing a lot of those monotonous things that don't really add a whole lot of value, and just making it fast and easy for your recruiters to do what they love, which is, like you said, connecting with people and like really bringing out the humanity and like the value behind your company in that way. I think that, one thing that we often overlook is that you often, like, recruiters are a huge part of the business, right? Like your recruiter is at the forefront of hiring, and hiring for recruiters is just as critical, right? Like making sure that your recruiters are equipped, that your recruiters are, able to do the job that they love to do instead of like spending all their time in emails. So I think that's also one thing that we see a lot is just like, wanting to focus on the recruiter experience and making sure that the recruiter experience is great, because the recruiter experience will translate to the candidate experience.
And speaking, from a recruiter perspective, as as a recruiter, I'm going to want to join the company that has the tools. The tools are going to help me in the technology. If, you know, I talk to a company and, you know, if I were to join another company and they said, hey, we don't have any tools, or, you know, if I ask like what tech stack they had and they don't have any, I'm not going to continue that process. So I feel like not only does this help candidates, but I feel like you'll be getting better recruiters on board with your company that will help, you know, move things along, adopt the tools, because they're excited and they know that they'll, you know, be well taken care of throughout the process as well. And then, yeah, that makes them even more excited when they are on the phones. So I think, again, helps the candidates, but also gets you better recruiters on board with your company.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I'm going to share one more slide and make a last call for any questions. If you have any burning questions, I urge you now to put them into the Q&A, but I will share one last slide here, which is just a quick story. As we're talking about like hiring this competitive market, I think that one of our customers, Compasses, has really highlighted how they've been able to break through a lot of this competitive, this tough talent landscape that they're currently experiencing, and able to kind of leverage technology to get beyond that. As we all know, healthcare has been a whirlwind in the last couple of years, to say the least. And it's been tough. It's been one of the toughest industries to hire for, and not only healthcare, but also in the essential worker space as well. And I think that one of the things that they've really focused on is still leveraging still having really ambitious recruiting goals while leveraging as much speed and efficiency as possible. And Compasses has, over 6,000 employees across 200 locations in 30 states. So a lot of just land to cover and a lot of territory to cover. As engaging the right talent at scale became increasingly challenging, they turned to us and they turned to technology to really help them accelerate their hiring efforts. So by using automation, their hiring team actually saves 18 to 20 hours each week, while still engaging more than 500 candidates a month, which is just a mammoth achievement. And on top of that, they have been able to shorten their time to hire from a week to a day and a half. This results in them being able to hire the top talent because they're really engaging and they're quick to extend an offer after interviewing a great candidate and engaging with them and having automation do all those touch points so that the candidate, doesn't miss a beat and they're able to kind of wrap up the entire, interview process in basically no time. So I think that's just a huge testament to how technology has been able to make a huge difference in companies' processes and how they're able to really boost their top talent and really focus and invest in that through leveraging technology to remove all of the gunk in the gutters. But all right, let's see. I think that about wraps it up. Again, thank you everybody so much for your time. I put our emails, both myself and Jenny's emails on here. If you have any questions, feel free to email us directly. It's Wendy@sensehq.com and Jenny@sensehq.com. And with that, Jenny, thank you so much for being on.
Wendy. That was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Yes, it was so great to hear your experiences. I really want to thank you for sharing that with us today, and want to thank everybody else for joining as well and spending your Tuesday, an hour with us on Tuesday. And with that, we will let everybody get a couple minutes back and hope everybody enjoys their day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.